All right, we briefly talked about container commands throughout the course, so you're already familiar with many of them. In this section, we're going to review them one more time, but I'm also going to give you some extra tips along the way. For starters, let's look at our images. So I've cleaned up some of the images that I created in the previous section. Now we only have React App with the latest tag. We also have Ubuntu and Alpine, which we're not going to use in this section. Now, hopefully you completed the previous section, but if you didn't, I highly encourage you to download the zip file app attached to this lesson. In this zip file, you can find our React application, as well as the Docker file that we created in the previous section. Use that Docker file to build an image, and now we are on the same page, okay? Now, question for you. How can we see the running containers? Using Docker what? Docker PS, short for processes, because a container is just a process, but it's a special kind of process because it has its own file system, which is provided by the image. Okay, currently there are no running containers here. So I want to run a new container using the React App image. This is going to start a development web server. So I'll be right back. Okay, our web server is ready. Now there's a problem. I cannot type any additional commands on the terminal window. If I press Ctrl and C to get out of this, our container stops. Let's verify that. So Docker PS, look, no container is running. So let me show you a cool technique. Let's bring up the run command one more time. Now this time we're going to use an option -d that is short for detached. With this, we can run this container in the detached mode, which means in the background. So look, that's it. Now the terminal window is free and we can do whatever we want. Of course, the container is going to take a few seconds to start because that's the time we need for the web server to start, okay? So that's one option. Now, let's look at the running processes. So here we have one container. Here's my container ID. Now, if you look on the far right column, which is not visible in my recording window, and I don't want to resize this window because the text is going to get small. In the last column, you can see the names column. So Docker automatically associates each container with a random name. So in the future, when we want to reference a container, we can either use its ID or its name. But we can also give our container a name when starting them. So let's start another container in detached mode. This time we're going to use --name to give it a name. I'm going to call this blue-sky. It's easier to work with than a randomly generated name by Docker. And we're going to use the React App image. Good. So let's look at the running containers. Now we have two containers and one of them is called blue sky.